Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After you through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. We have a ton of stuff to talk about in today's show, which is awesome. I feel like it's the first one that we've done in a while that has a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of interesting stuff. And this first one was really interesting, and I think it answers some questions that I think a lot of Dolphins fans had, and especially for me, because I thought the move was weird. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins defensive coordinator Vic Fangio convinced linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel to resign. The veteran was convinced to remain in South Beach by new defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, as detailed by Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald, who, if you guys have a subscription there, you can go read that. Obviously, he re-signed a one-year deal. His defensive snap drop this past season this last season was 29%. The previous season from that was 71%. And I think we all know that watching the games that, I believe he dealt with some injuries last year. Maybe I'm misremembering that, but Melvin Ingram obviously took more snaps than he did at that position. But I'm pretty sure Van Ginkel got hurt at one point. I could be wrong. But the interesting part about this story is that obviously the Dolphins are moving him to middle linebacker, which I thought was weird because I thought, okay, Van Ginkel, the worst thing he does is in coverage, and he struggled to tackle in the open field at times, and that's something that a middle linebacker has to be really good at. So to play off the ball linebacker is a little weird of a shift for Van Ginkel. And for Vic Fangio, who obviously is one of the best defensive coordinators in the world, to say that, to want him back and to convince him back and to have a plan that obviously that he agrees with, and it convinced him to resign. I know that he had that visit with New England, and obviously he played in that scheme for many years, so that would be a scheme fit for him. But whatever Vic told him obviously had something to do with him moving to middle linebacker, and that makes me more confident in the move. Now, from what we've seen from him throughout his career, it doesn't exactly point to that. But the fact that Vic Fangio convinced him to stay and wants him to play that position, I think eases my concerns for sure. And the good news is he won the orange jersey. And if you guys aren't familiar, I'm sure everybody listening to this is familiar with that. But if you wear the orange jersey in practice, that means you were the previous practice's best player. And he's already worn it. Well, he was the second inside linebacker to get it to Duke Riley. But I think those are all good signs, and it makes me more interested in seeing what Van Ginkel does at that position. And I've said this many times, but he's always been a great run defender. And as a blitzing linebacker, obviously has a ton of potential too. But I do question his radius and his athleticism at that position. Can he be a sideline to sideline guy? Is he a specialist guy where he's kind of a base package linebacker? We'll have to see when the season starts, but it does make me more confident in the move. The fact that Vic wanted it to happen, I think, is good. Now, I know everybody knows this, but the Dolphins got the most cap space after the June 1st cut designations. They got $13 million in cap space, so I know everybody already knows that, which is obviously pretty clutch. And after they got the cap space, they signed 3 of their draft picks. Obviously, A-Chain being the biggest one, Higgins, and Ryan Hayes, the tackle out of Michigan, who apparently, according to a lot of the beat writers, is struggling in Miami Dolphins OTAs so far, which doesn't surprise me. And I'm talking about Ryan Hayes, in case you guys get confused. I haven't heard much about Higgins. I don't know. We'll have to see. Hopefully that kind of turns, because I still really like him, and I think he can have a bright future in Miami if he can make the transition. And then A-Chain has had rave reviews so far in OTAs, but it's nice that the Dolphins got them 3 of the 4 picks signed. And obviously the last one who's left is Cam Smith. And And obviously the Dolphins, and we'll talk about that here in a second, are trying to get a deal done with another player. But yeah, and this next news story I kind of want to run through quickly, but it was detailed, and there was more detail to this time, which was nice. This next news story: Dolphins remain on Dalvin Cook's radar, and I know everybody's sick of hearing about it, and I'm sick of reading about it. But Barry Jackson goes in to explain again. This news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. And Barry Jackson in the Miami Herald details that there isn't a secret agreement between the Dolphins to kind of make a deal, the Dolphins and Dalvin Cook, if he gets cut, or if he gets cut, that there's a secret deal already done that he'll just automatically be a Dolphin and they already have a deal in place. Apparently that is not true. That rumor was dispelled by Barry Jackson. But he does go on to say that there is still mutual interest from both parties, which I think is hilarious. It's like, yeah, they don't have a secret deal done, but they both would like to be, they have mutual interest in each other still. So that's interesting. We'll see what happens. It seems like it's gonna happen. I mean, there were a ton of other rumors over the last week that Carolina's interested in him now. Obviously, there's been Bills talk. There's been even Eagles talk, which I was like, okay, then how much of this do we really believe at this point? But we'll see what happens. I still think everybody's kind of wanting this to happen if you're a Dolphins fan. There's not really too many arguments against it, other than him having an injury history that's not great. Other than that, there's really nothing I could say that, I mean, there's no negatives. He's still in the prime of his career, and he would make the offense a lot better. So, unless you love A-Chain, then if you're super sold on A-Chain, then the move wouldn't make a ton of sense, I guess. This next news story comes from Bleacher Report. The Dolphins are trying to get a deal done with Christian Wilkins before the season starts, which I think we all kind of knew already, with Ed Oliver, who recently just signed a new deal. A lot of defensive tackles were re-signed this offseason. So, obviously we're all kind of waiting for that to happen. And I'm glad they re-signed Christian. I mean, he had a weird start to his career, but he's one of my favorite Dolphins on the team. I love watching him play football. He's like Michael Bennett, where his numbers that you typically look at for defensive linemen don't, other than his tackles for loss and his tackles, but like sacks and stuff of that nature, they're not ever going to be like super high. I think the highest, like I could see him having a 9 or 8 sack season easily, but he's more of an all-around great defender, and he's a phenomenal leader. Obviously, the fans love him. I love him. One of my favorite draft picks in the last 10 years. And one of the best first-round picks the Dolphins have had in a long time. I really, really hope they get this deal done. It'll be interesting to see how much he's going to command versus some of the other guys if they do throw production into the talks. Even though I think he's a better player than Ed Oliver and a lot of some of these other defensive tackles, I think he actually is better than. We'll see how much he gets paid, but it also would save the Dolphins cap space. So if the dominoes fall in the next few days that Cam Smith and Christian Wilkins get signed, I wouldn't be surprised if Dalvin Cook is around the corner after that, if that's something that they can get done. But yeah, who wouldn't want Christian Wilkins back? He's a great player. Glue guy who was great on all those bad Dolphins teams too early on in his career. One of the highlights of the team. So he's never really been bad. I don't think. He's never been a bad player. I think this past season he's really transitioning into being a great player. And he showed that last year. He was really, really good last year. And it sucks that the defense was ran like the way it was. It hurt a lot of people's numbers. A lot of people played better football than the stats show. Jalen Phillips is another great example of that. Even Bradley Chubb, I think, would have had better production if the defense was ran differently. And Christian Wilkins was hurt by that as well. Dude, a dream match with him and Vic Fangio. Like him and Raekwon, I think, and obviously Zach, but Raekwon especially, since he hasn't been overly impactful throughout his career here. I think this is a perfect scheme fit for him. And I'm very excited to see them play in Vic's system. Vic has such a good defense, dude. It's like every time I think about it, it's like, I really do believe the Dolphins easily could have the best defense in the league. It's one of the most well-rounded rosters on that side of the football. And even just thinking about how good Christian Wilkins was last year, and the idea of him with Vic Fangio is pretty cool. So yeah, I hope that deal gets done. I think we all hope that gets done. Let me see if there's anything else before that I want to throw this in here in case you guys care, but I thought it was really cool that Pro Football Rumors did this. They did every team's who was every team's most expensive quarterback contract throughout their team's history. I don't know if you guys would guess it. It's pretty, I don't know, it's kind of a trick question. But if you're not familiar, it's Ryan Tannehill. I don't remember. I think he might have signed it in 2014. It was like for $77 million or something like that. But yeah, that is the highest paid quarterback in Miami Dolphins history, is Ryan Tannehill. Yeah, I think that's it for this section. We're going to move on to OTA talk. OTA news. And now I know everybody's probably heard this. It's been reported by many people. This is from Bro Bible, but it pretty much covers what everybody else has covered. Tua has become a major voice in the locker room and has gained. He's feeling healthy, and he's gained from people that have seen him in OTAs. Has looked like a little bit bigger than he was a year ago. It's nice to know that he's healthy, and. There was a report that, the Dolphins were having a sloppy practice in OTAs. Tua stopped the practice, and this whole article goes into that. Tua stopped the practice, and because it was sloppy, he stopped and kind of was like, "Hey, let's pick it up a little bit," and which is great. He needs to be that leader, and I'm glad he's holding people accountable in the locker room, yeah, it's good news. I know he's having a good offseason so far, which is good. And the offense should be a lot better around him. So like we did last week, these are some observations that Omar Kelly had of the entire week 2 of OTAs. This comes from Dolphins Nation. And I think Sports Illustrated, this is by Omar Kelly, obviously. And these are some of the observations he had so far in OTAs. I wish I could be there and make these observations for you. How awesome would it be if we could do like a live podcast with OTAs in the back? I mean, come on, guys. That'd be amazing. But this is some of the observations that he had. Robbie Anderson is still a threat. He consistently got behind whoever was defending him, is what Omar Kelly had to say about him. And he goes on to really rave about him, saying how well he's played so far and how he has not lost a step. And Omar Kelly, who's a very skeptical human being, I think that's pretty high praise coming from him. So that's good news. If he can, this is someone who's had 1,000 yards, 1,100 yards in a season, 900 yards on a relatively consistent basis, or for a few years there, and scored a lot of touchdowns in his career. So it's really just the only thing that I don't like about Rob or Chosen Anderson is his attitude sometimes is a little annoying. Other than that, he's he's been a really good player. It would be an insanely awesome third option. And he caught, I forgot to mention this. Some of the highlight plays that Chosen has made so far in OTAs. He split the coverage on Elijah Campbell and Vernon McKinley for a 50-yard gain from Tua. And he's made countless other deep throws. I've read a lot of tweets about how he's got some deep passes as well from, I think, Mike White as well. So he's having a good offseason, so that's great. That's good news. If those three are on the field, it's the fastest receiver core in the NFL. One of the fastest ever. You'd probably have to go back to the Raiders days of George Blanda and stuff like that to kind of how a team was assembled like that. Um, A-Chain continues to get high praise. Omar Kelly mentioned him in the first week. He mentions him how fast he is in the second week, so he continues to get really, really, really high praise. Continues to make a lot of really nice catches in the pass game. That's the thing that I loved most about him coming out of college. And David Long, he mentions again, which he mentioned in the first week, who has been held out of teamwork, doing some rehab stuff on the sideline, Omar Kelly goes on to say. So, who cares? It's OTAs. But obviously he's concerned about, if he gets hurt and stuff, like what the Dolphins. At this point, with Van Ginkel moving inside, and he's had a pretty smooth transition so far, and Vic Fangio wanting to play that position, the depth at that position should not be an issue. You still have Channing Tindall there, Duke Riley, Jerome Baker. The Dolphins have more than enough people to cover if David Long does get hurt. I don't think to me, it's not that big of a deal. This has been reported on. I thought that was interesting that Connor Williams has been absent, and some people think he might be looking for a new deal. So a lot of the other offensive linemen, backup offensive linemen, and some of the starters on the team have had to cross-train with him being out. So that's a story to follow. He's still under contract, but we'll see what the Dolphins do. He deserves a longer-term deal. I thought he was really good last year, and he was really good in the run game, especially with his movement ability and in the screen game. He was one of the few highlights of the Miami Dolphins screen game last year, which was terrible. I don't know why people think that's what all Tua does is throw screens for touchdowns, but that's not true. The Dolphins were terrible at screens last year. And this last observation that he had, I think, is really interesting. And Chris, God bless him, Chris Greer, he always does a great job of finding good undrafted free agents, obviously with Kader Kohu, and he's done it throughout his entire career as the Dolphins GM. And honestly, the history of the Dolphins, they've always had a kind of good luck with that, with later round guys. Mitchell Agude, I think is how you say his name. I hope I'm not butchering his name. Who apparently is having a phenomenal OTA so far. Obviously, the undrafted rookie out of the University of Miami. I'm sure everybody here knows him. But he beat up Ryan Hayes, the former Michigan standout. Omar says the Dolphins drafted in the 7th round so badly one time it looked like a pass rusher's pancake. So, obviously, he's trained under Jason Taylor, because I think Jason's coaching the defensive line at the U currently, which is cool. So it's nice to see. Obviously, a former U player doing really good in Dolphins uniform. But yeah, it's really something to watch. He played a very versatile player. He doesn't really detail like how he got the sack, but I'm assuming he played outside linebacker since it was Hayes. But you can line him up in the A gap if you wanted to. You can stand him up. He can cover. He's done a lot of different things. He looks like your typical, like, old school, really good outside linebacker. And so I'm interested to see what he does in the offseason, especially in preseason. But the fact that he's had such a good OTA so far, the Dolphins, and Omar goes on to say that they might have found another undrafted hidden gem, which is really cool. So look out for Mitchell Agude. He's a big dude too. He had 4 sacks, I think, his last year at the U. But I think he had a lot of. Let me check this. He had a lot of TFLs, or at least a good. I think maybe it was like 7 or so. I don't remember. But very versatile type of a guy. Good athlete too. And I'm interested to see where this goes for sure. So as for a recap, A-Chain for the second week, this is what Omar Kelly has observed. A-Chain continues to impress. Robbie Anderson has not lost a step. It seems like he is headed in the right direction, which is great. And then Mitchell Agude, watch out for him. He might make some noise as an undrafted rookie. He's had a good OTA so far. And I guess David Long hasn't really done too much. They've seemed to have been, making sure that he's healthy for the start of the season, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And then obviously Van Ginkel, who not only got an orange jersey as the best player in practice at inside linebacker, but Vic Fangio wanted him to play that position, which I think is interesting. So let's get into the fan Q&A where we answer fans questions. There is a weird noise outside of my window right now. It sounds like a car alarm of some kind. It's kind of distracting me, but anyway, this next question comes from Rob. He says, "Who do you feel is the weakest link in the O line? On the O line?" This question comes from Rob Dolph. Let me restart. He says, "What do you feel is the weakest link on the O line, and how do you feel about their competition or replacement?" Oof. The weakest link. First name you can't. If you have to answer this in under a second, or I blow your brains out. Not to be that graphic, but if there was a gun to my head, and it's like you have to answer this in under a second, I would say the first name that came to my mind. I'm sorry, this noise is Austin Jackson. Just because of how important and how up and down his career has been, but I would say that could be the weakest link and could be the most devastating Achilles heel of the team if he plays bad again. So, and then obviously his replacement would be Isaiah Wynn, who has played really good football at tackle, like above average starter in the NFL good. So hopefully maybe he can recapture some of that magic. Thank God the beeping has stopped. This next question comes from SM. He said it's going to be a fun season, not a question, but just more of a statement. It is. This next question comes from Mike Lewis. He says, "What do you think the reason is that there are so many two-way haters? What do you think is the reason there are so many two-way haters?" I don't know why I repeated that. I don't know. I don't really know. There definitely has been some disrespect. I mean, he's gotten some respect from some rankings that I've seen throughout the offseason. I've seen him to a rank as high as 11. I think that was from PFF or something, but very close to the top 10. So I don't think there definitely are people out there that like him a lot. I don't know why. I don't know who honestly cares. I've talked about this a lot, but coming out of the season, I was a little bit more down on Tua, but rewatching the season and really looking at what happened, and I think his two worst games were the Niners game and the Chargers game. Even though the Chargers game wasn't all on him, there were some other things that happened in that game that were not his fault, and that he really couldn't do or change it too much. But still not one of his best games. And then obviously the Niners game, which was just, we should have scored more points than we did. And I think it's a lot of people hate on Tua, or I wouldn't say hate on him, but criticize him, and rightfully so. I mean, it wasn't a good game, but leaving that season and then going back and watching it, he was a lot better than I remembered him being. And I think that's always a good sign, because usually with Dolphins quarterbacks, when you go back and watch it, you're like, dang, man. You go back and watch old Ryan Tannehill stuff, you're like, good Lord. Even though the numbers aren't terrible, it just, it was very inconsistent. But I think that, like I said, as the season was going on, I think that season is the best quarterback season a quarterback has had since Dan Marino. At least in my opinion. So, yeah, I don't know why I think there's legitimate criticism there. I think some of the criticism that I hear from a lot of people is weird, like the screen criticism of how, Tua doesn't push the ball down the field. Not only do the numbers say differently, but just watch the film. He does not throw screens for touchdowns like Jimmy Garoppolo or Jared Goff did early in his career with Sean McVay. That's not true. It's just not true, and it's lazy criticism because they clearly that to me, when you say that, immediately I'm like, you don't watch Dolphins games. We did score a screen touchdown that was 5 yards out to Jalen Waddle in the Ravens game. That's about as far as that goes. All the other screens were literally, some of those play calls lost those games, because, and it's not even Mike's fault. It's just how bad on those plays were executed at times. So there's definitely ignorance out there when it comes to Tua. I've talked about some of the things that he needs to do better, and and some of the things that he struggled with especially in that Niners game. But it has not to a legit, I think, is one of the best pocket passers in the NFL, especially since it's a dying breed. And I think he's a really good quarterback. And I'm excited to see what he does this season. I think he's going to have a better season this season. This next question comes from Richard. He says, will second-year tight end Tanner Connor make the Dolphins? I don't know. That's a good question. Probably not. They added a ton of depth there with Saubert, Croft, obviously Higgins, and then you have Durham Smythe as well. So I don't know. I don't know if probably a practice squad guy. Tua haters, ESPN, Shannon Sharp, and Steve Smith, Skip Bayless, Chris Sims, Colin Cowherd hate the Miami Dolphins. They didn't say stupid nonsense no one would watch. They wouldn't have jobs. I don't watch Undisputed. I definitely don't watch Colin Cowherd. I do not watch ESPN. It gives me a migraine. I do like Shannon Sharp's podcast. I think it's good, and I do think Shannon Sharp is not a hater. I think he has legitimate. He is great. He's very knowledgeable about the game, and Chris Sims as well. I love his podcast. I think it's really good. It definitely gets into the minutia of the game of football, which I like, and I disagree with Chris's criticisms of Tua, and I definitely think he had quarterbacks that are higher than him that are not better than him on his rankings. But that doesn't mean that they're haters. I just don't agree with them. Now, Colin Cowherd and some of these other guys on these lists, yeah, those guys are weird. They say really stupid things, and I agree with that. But, yeah, I don't know what else to say to that. Tua could definitely dispel a lot of that this upcoming season. I don't know really what he has to, I guess, win the division. And I will say this about Chris Sims. He's really high on our team. He's literally said multiple times that we have one of the best rosters in football. And even that podcast that he was ranking to it, I think he said we even might win the division. I think he's one of the few people that have said that we will win the division, or he might think about picking us to win the division. So he's not I don't know. And he said a lot of really nice things about Tua, and some things that I don't agree with, but I don't know. I think it's all personal preference and stuff like that. I think this was a great episode. I enjoyed it. I obviously love doing this stuff. I don't know what this ringing is outside, but I'll figure that out after this podcast, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I love this team, love the coaching staff, love everything about it, and I'm excited to see what happens to Dalvin Cook. At the very least, let's just all hope he doesn't go to the AFC East. Same thing with DeAndre Hopkins. I think we can all agree on that. And, yeah. And if he does go to the AFC East, obviously, hopefully he's a Dolphin. But yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope to God this gets resolved in the next week. I'm sick of reading about it, and I hope something happens with Dalvin Cook in the next week. That would be great. So I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and I'll see you guys in the next one.